Hello, everyone. My name is Gil Penalosa, and this is Cities for Everyone, the webinar, where every other Tuesday I invite fascinating people to share their stories, their experience, so that all of us can become better, passionate advocates. Advocates on what? On creating cities that are more equitable, more sustainable, and more fun, where everybody can live healthier and happier. Originally, I'm from Bogota, Colombia, but I've been living in Toronto, Canada for the past 26 years. And 20 years ago, I created the nonprofit 880 Cities. Over the last couple of decades, I've been fortunate to have worked in over 350 cities all over the world. And this webinar is a way of giving back, inviting people that I have met. And today, the guest is amazing. We have Janette Sadik-Khan. Yeah, she's going to be talking about Streetfight, a handbook for an urban revolution. Why Janette? Because I admire doers, and she is a super doer. Maybe because in the past I led the construction of over 200 parks and also took a small program called Ciclovia, like an open streets of only a few kilometers and few thousand people, and turned it into the world's largest pop-up park. It's an amazing open street of every Sunday, over 120 kilometers in Bogota, where people walk and bike and run and skate. So I know that it's not easy. It never is, anywhere. That's why Janette calls it street fight. Janette is a doer. People were talking about Times Square, for example, to make it pedestrian for 50 years, but nobody had the vision and the guts to do it. Janette did. She saw the Ciclovia in Bogota and created in New York the Summer Streets, a fantastic program. She built hundreds of kilometers of miles of bike lanes all over the city. And once she left the city of New York as a principal of Bloomberg, she's transforming cities all over the world. Janette, thank you very, very much for accepting the invitation. We have a full house today, and people are eager to learn from you how to get things done. Because some people want to be commissioners, some people want to be mayors, but very few actually want to do as commissioner. And you are one of those who saw being a commissioner a means to creating a better New York for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Gil. Well, it is great to be with you. And Gil, you are the OG street fighter. And so I want to also thank you for all of the work that you've done transforming streets around the world. But I am happy to be here with you today and with everyone on this Zoom from so many cities and countries. So I'm Janette Sadik-Khan, and I'm here to talk about street fight and street fights. But before I start, I want to ask you all a question. What comes to mind when you think of a street? Is it cars? Is it traffic? Is it bikes? Traffic signals? For many people, this is what comes to mind when they think of a street. And not too long ago, this is what street design looked like in New York City on 42nd Street. Our traffic engineers saw a street like this and said, yeah, this is working just fine. And when you look around the world, you see much of the same thing. Our streets aren't as different as you might think. This is one of the less famous stretches of Broadway, close to City Hall. You see 4 lanes, all designed for driving or for parking cars, which is more or less the same design that runs along Spring Street in downtown LA, or on Serangoon Road in Singapore, or these 4 lanes on Pretoria Street in South Africa, or on Tarlabaşı Boulevard in Istanbul. These street designs are universal and they're dismal. There's a reason that you don't see postcards of these streets. And I love to ask people what they think are the greatest cities in the world. And for those of you on the Zoom today, which ones come to mind for you? What do you think are the greatest cities in the world? A lot of people name check the same cities: London, Paris, Rome. And there are more than 4,000 cities in the world with a population over 150,000. Why do so many people agree on the greatest? What do they have in common? Maybe the better question is, what do we have in common? Because it's about us. What the greatest cities have in common is that they're made up of great places. Even the biggest cities are made up of small places like this, streets where people connect and where life in the city happens. There's no book of streets yet, but there should be. And one of the first entries would be that cities are great not because of what they build, but by what they make possible, by the things that they build, by the places they create. What people love about cities isn't just their buildings and monuments and museums, but the urban fabric that brings us together. Churchill said that we shape our buildings and then our buildings shape us. And the same thing goes for our streets. We shape our streets and then our streets shape us. Because streets aren't just exciting places to be, they're the foundation of a city. They can bring people together or drive them apart, make them healthy or unhealthy. They can inspire us or deaden us to our surroundings. And whether it's Las Ramblas in Barcelona or Dotonbori in Osaka, great streets are similar in the street life and the activity that they offer and the identity they project. When you're walking along Oxford Circus, you know you're in London. And when you're walking in Centro in Mexico City, you know you're in a great place because that's where the people are. Or when you're walking along Pike Street in Seattle. Your streets are your city. They're not just a way to get from place to place. They're places themselves, and they're one of the most valuable resources that a city has. Streets with people on them are safer, they're better for business, and that's what attracts people to come and stay and raise families. We have a definite picture of the ideal street, and it's derived from history. Our streets used to be shared spaces where people would walk and bike, and there were carriages and streetcars. This is Hester Street in Manhattan in 1907. And this is the same spot today. As time went by, more and more of the street was taken over by cars, by traffic signals, by parking, to the point where little by little, and then all at once, we lost the people, we lost the plot, and we lost the street. In city after city, we stopped seeing streets as places for people and viewed them as places to park cars and get somewhere else, like here in Toronto. And after 100 years of building roads and traffic signals and signs and lanes, you'd think that our streets would be safe and traffic free. But there's no place in the world more congested and deadly. 1.2 million people die every year in traffic crashes. That's like 21 MAX jets crashing every day for a year. And this isn't because traffic deaths are inevitable and we're powerless to stop them. It's because we designed our roads for danger. And we've accepted traffic deaths as just a routine part of life, the same way we've accepted that building roads reduces traffic. And as Lewis Mumford put it, building more roads to prevent congestion is like loosening your belt to prevent obesity. If building more roads solved congestion, we would have solved it decades ago. The US has spent over $10 trillion over the past 70 years to build 4 million miles of roads. And guess what happened? Surprise, surprise. We have more cars and more congestion, and people spend even more time behind the wheel. And it really begs the question, Do you own the car, or does the car own you? And it's proven that you get what you build for. A study by the University of Toronto looked at 20 years of road building and established that there's a one-to-one link between the construction of new roads and increased traffic. Dealing with congestion and accommodating growth is a challenge that many cities face. And when I first became transportation commissioner in 2007, the streets of New York City had barely changed in 75 years. New York City is the densest, most transit-rich city in the United States. And yet we had many streets like this one, where these flexible delineators were innovative traffic engineering. So instead of a business as usual approach, Mike Bloomberg took a new approach to growth in the city. His Plan YC agenda looked at how we could grow and accommodate 1 million more people that were expected to move here, while still improving the safety, the sustainability, and the quality of life in our residential neighborhoods and business districts. And this had profound implications for our streets. New York City DOT manages 10,000 kilometers of streets, 20,000 kilometers of sidewalks, nearly 800 bridges, and one of the nation's largest ferry operations. And we can change the way the city works every time we touch the street. City transportation agencies can be more than just stewards of the status quo, filling potholes and paving streets and widening roads. And we wanted to make it easier for people to take the bus, easier for people to bike, to walk around, and to be safe doing so. Not just creating a slightly less bad version of our streets, but designing them for the city you want to be in 5 and 10 and 20 years. This is Madison Square at 23rd Street in 2007. And this is the same location after we redesigned it to make it easier to walk and bike and take transit. Seen this way, a transportation department is kind of a ministry for the future of cities, not just struggling to manage the challenges that we have today, but to take action to build the city we need to be. And I came to see our streets as the rails for our buses. We had the largest bus fleet in North America, but the slowest bus speeds. So we implemented the city's first rapid bus routes where you pay before boarding, buses run in dedicated lanes, make fewer stops, and with technology to give buses the green light at intersections. What happened? Buses sped up by 20% and ridership soared. We created 7 rapid bus lines across the city in just 6 years. And now there are 20 routes in place, making the commute better for 600,000 people a day. Over the last 15 years, New York City has embarked on one of the largest transformations of public space in the world. This is 14th Street in Manhattan. This traffic pattern was a relic from another era. And we turned street space into seat space. And a few months later, an Apple store moved in next door on the right, and now the plaza is filled with people eating and drinking coffee or stopping to take in the city or walk along the High Line. This is another view of Madison Square at the foot of the world-famous Flatiron Building, which over the years had become an endless expanse of asphalt. It was one of the longest intersections in New York City. And today, it's one of the most successful, sought-after public spaces in the city. People often choose to sit in the plaza rather than the world-class park on the right, just to feel the pulse of the city. So instead of endlessly debating whether to try something in the first place, we worked quickly, reclaiming former traffic lanes, like here in the Bronx, turning them into a safe space for kids, becoming an extension of the school itself, just with paint, stones, flexible posts, which transportation departments use every single day. So after creating a kind of showcase of projects and showing what was possible around the city, we took our toolkit to the crossroads of the world, Times Square. Now, as many of you may know, New York City is mostly on a grid above 14th Street, but the one exception is Broadway, which cuts across the grid on a diagonal. And this does two things. It creates grand squares where the streets intersect, but it also created hot spots of congestion. And this was a particular problem in Times Square because 350,000 people walked through it every day. Pedestrians were actually 90% of the traffic, but they only had 10% of the space. So it was kind of this basic math problem. People had tried to fix it for years with slip lanes and changing the signal timing, all sorts of things, but nothing worked. So we took an idea to Mike Bloomberg that we would close Broadway to cars from 42nd to 47th Street and open it up to people. And we would do it as a pilot project. We would test it and measure the impact. If it worked, we'd keep it. And if it didn't work, we'd put it back to the way that it was. I remember when I brought this project for final review to City Hall, and all of the deputy mayors in New York City were sitting around kind of a Knights of the Round Table setting. And Mike asked them one by one what they thought of this idea. And let's just say I sank lower and lower into my chair. And I forgot to mention that he did this when he was up for re-election. So in the middle of his re-election campaign, this proposal came up. And so despite the reaction around the table, the mayor turned to me and he said, I don't ask my commissioners to do the right thing according to the political calendar. I ask my commissioners to do the right thing, period. And he shook my hand and he said, let's do it. So we did it, and we rolled out the barrels, and people came out immediately. Now, many of you work in cities, and you know that when you have a big project, you can run into problems. Things can go sideways. And for us, it was when we rolled out these barrels and we realized we reclaimed 2.5 acres of public space, but we didn't put anything out there. There was no there. So we ran to the Pinchink hardware store and we bought hundreds and hundreds of beach chairs. And we put out the beach chairs, and the headlines the next day were not about the traffic. They were about the beach chairs. Did you like the beach chairs? Did you like the color of the beach chairs, the size of the beach chairs? So the lesson is, if you ever find yourself in trouble on a project, think beach chairs. And the innovation in Times Square didn't end with the project. We also developed new ways to measure the impact of our projects. We looked at the mobility benefits. Traffic moved better. The safety benefits. Injuries went way down. The economic benefits. It became one of the top 10 retail locations on the planet. And we went from temporary materials to permanent construction in under 4 years. If we'd gone through the traditional planning process, we would still be talking about it instead of enjoying it today. Whether it's creating room to walk, ride a bike, or take the bus, good design puts people in your streets, and it changes people's expectations of their city. And this isn't just a New York story. In Milan, we work with the mayor and his team to redesign streets outside of schools, transforming them into a safe space for kids to play and residents to hang out. And when you see people of different backgrounds, native-born and immigrants, boys and girls, men and women, all using the same space, you see a place that supports the life of a city. And the kids were a key part of the process, designing, planning, and painting the plazas. In less than 3 years, 65% of people in Milan are now within walking distance of a plaza or bus stop. And every city has a story to tell. But if there's one theme that keeps emerging, it's that if you want to change a city, you can start by building a bike lane. In New York City, most trips are under 5 kilometers and can be easily done by bike. But for years, no one would do it. People said it's because it's too hot in the summer, it's too cold in the winter, but it really wasn't weather that was the barrier. There's really no such thing as a bad city for cycling, only bad infrastructure. But you get out of your street what you put into it. Just a few years ago, there was no bike lane here on Broadway. And a few years later, there were bike lanes, bike share stations, pedestrian plazas. We invited people to enjoy the street in new ways. We focused on creating a network of connected lanes so you could get to where you were going safely. And we addressed the underlying problem of the street, making it work not just for cyclists, but also for pedestrians and for the green market next door here in Union Square. Because bike lanes aren't just good for bike riders, they're the anchor for an entirely different kind of street. The New York City cycling story started small. This was the map of bike lanes when I started. And this was the system by the end of 2013 when we left, with 350 kilometers of new bike lanes. It looks so easy. I love showing this. Just push button. There you go, all new bike lanes. And you can see that the lanes are dense in the busiest part of the city. And today there are more than 2,400 kilometers of bike lanes citywide. And you can now bike from borough to borough in lanes that are protected from car traffic. These lanes were the foundation for our bike share system, which we launched in 2013. Mike Bloomberg saw that if we wanted to create a greater and safer city, bikes had to be part of the transportation mix. Citi Bike is now in its 10th year, and it's been a huge success. People have taken more than 200 million rides, and it's expanding to 40,000 bikes. It's the largest bike share system in the world outside of China. And it may have started in New York, but there's been an explosion of bike lanes across the United States in the last decade in cities that are not typically seen as bike-friendly, like Salt Lake City and Minneapolis. And in cities where cycling was once inconceivable, like in Mexico City and Bogota. Meanwhile, more and more cities are experimenting with designs to attract and accommodate the next generation of riders. Cities like London and Paris have made extensive investments in cycling infrastructure over the last decade at a fraction of the cost of building car infrastructure. And in both cities, bikes now outnumber cars in the center of the city. It didn't just take decades and billions of euro. It took looking at streets slightly differently. You know, people sometimes criticize bike paths and plazas as nice things to have, but not if there are roads to pave and potholes to fill. But for every dollar that we spent on bike lanes and plazas in New York City, we spent $99 to build and maintain a state of good repair on our roads and bridges. It's not either or. And research across the world shows that these investments improve retail sales. And if you think about it, it makes sense because cars don't shop, people do. A lot of business owners, you've probably run across this, think that anything that touches a single parking space is a threat to their bottom lines. But cycling infrastructure is a strategic investment in the safety and economic growth of your city. And if you think bike lanes are too expensive, you should consider the cost of the status quo. So we brought a data-driven approach to all of our projects. I work for a data-driven mayor because transportation has impacts beyond just moving people. We looked beyond what happened to traffic speeds and looked at what was the impact of the traffic at the cash register, what happened to safety along the corridor. When we put down protected bike lanes, like here on 8th Avenue, which was the first one in the United States, we heard lots of people say that they were scared that people wouldn't be able to reach shops, that it was going to be bad for business. But sales data showed that where we put down protected bike lanes, injuries were cut in half for all people, and shops saw an almost 50% increase in retail sales along the corridor. On Bloor Street in Toronto, in Gil's hometown, a new bike path led to 34% more shoppers and a 20% increase in spending in stores. Transport for London research found that people who walk and ride bikes and buses to high streets shop more frequently, and sales increased by 30%. So whether it's making a street safer, better for business, or making it easier to get around, mile for mile, meter for meter, euro for euro, nothing beats a bike lane. So that's established, right? We're all good, right? Not a chance. Building bike lanes, bus lanes, and public spaces, basically changing the street, is child's play compared to changing the culture that sees driving as the only real mode of transportation. And let me just note that Suck-It Lane is not an official transport designation. And there's no magic message that everyone will agree on, just as there's no consensus that the status quo is any good. But because the goal isn't to avoid controversy as you transform your city. The goal is to transform your city despite it. And whenever you do something transformative, you hear a lot of community feedback. The street term for this feedback is backlash, and it's known on every continent. In New York City and in cities around the world, reclaiming streets is a fight. Fighting to give people more transportation choices creates strong political and cultural headwinds. These headlines are just a sample of the backlash we got for disturbing the status quo. It wasn't easy. There are over 8.5 million people in New York City, and there are 10 million opinions. Delaying projects and arguing them to death would have made some people very happy. And these fine people are protesting a bike lane in Brooklyn, saying it made the street more dangerous by slowing down cars. I'm not a fan of that logic, but I do love the creativity. I love that sign, "Don't be conned by Sadik-Khan." It's very clever. Members of the media were not happy. The Wall Street Journal editorial board called us totalitarians. They said that there was an all-powerful bike lobby that was pulling our strings. And in a way, this kind of conspiratorial talk didn't hurt our case. It actually helped to kind of galvanize it. And my hero, Jon Stewart, told it like it was. They're just bikes, lady. I think backlash is a sign that you're doing something right. It's what happens when you challenge the status quo. And it turned out that these changes were wildly popular. The last New York Times poll taken at the end of the Bloomberg administration found that 73% of New Yorkers approved of bike share. 72% of New Yorkers supported the plazas, and 64% supported bike lanes. If this had been an election, bike lanes would have been elected mayor of New York. And we need to remember this because it's not just about New York City. It's a global fight with national and regional governments in Canada, in New Zealand, in Italy, in Spain, and the UK, trying to tell cities what they can and can't do on their streets. And you still see this backlash in London. Mayor Sadik-Khan created an ultra-low emission zone in London and was met with some pretty strong pushback and some pretty clever wordplay. You cannot be serious. That's good. And my advice to London's mayor is keep calm and Sadik-Khan. Because in city after city that's made the most sweeping changes to their streets, the headlines against these changes are being replaced by headlines like this. Mayor Hidalgo in Paris, re-elected. London Mayor Khan, re-elected. Milan Mayor Sala, re-elected. Sydney Mayor Moore, re-elected. Montreal Mayor Valerie Plante, re-elected. Detroit Mayor Duggan, re-elected. This is called the bike-lash paradox. And we wrote in The Guardian that bikeable, walkable streets aren't just good policy, they're good politics. And where mayors have implemented the most aggressive bike lane and pedestrian plans, they have been consistently reelected. And if you're doing this work, you know it can be a struggle, but these are the most cost-effective and sustainable investments that you can make. And that whenever you have streets, you have possibilities. But it takes all of you, all of us, to make these possibilities a reality on the ground. The difference between a street built for cars and the one that supports children is a choice. And it represents not just your city's vision, but its values. And when you invest in your streets today, that's what you're paying forward to your city's future. And that's why leading cities aren't slowing down, and that's why they're not stopping. Since the pandemic, the most successful cities like Barcelona have doubled down with new strategies to transform their streets, redesigning them as multi-block green corridors with more places to meet and to gather, creating safe, inviting community spaces with room to play and to walk. Bogota followed Barcelona's lead, turning street space into seat space, part of a network of superblocks in Bogota. And Paris, which is now the global leader and turned the city of lights into the city of bikes. But the real magic in Paris has been on hundreds of streets in front of 300 schools. In just a few years, these streets have become play space, family space, and extensions of the classrooms themselves. Mayor Hidalgo has also turned side streets into stay streets that bring neighborhoods closer together and that are better for business. A greater city isn't a question of engineering. It's a question of imagination. It can be a fight. It's a street fight, but it's a fight that we can win, and it's a fight that we must win, because when you change the street, you change the world. Thank you.
Oh, what a wonderful presentation. I hope that everybody, whenever we have the recording in 2 days, please send it to all of the elected officials, to all decision makers, to the media. We have people from Chile, Mexico, Peru. We have people from Kenya and Uganda and Denmark and everywhere. Janette, many questions from many people who want to know about each other. One common question is, how were you able to fight the community that opposes the NIMBYs? I call the NIMBYs cave people, citizens against virtually everything.
Well, it's an excellent question because it's what everybody fights. You know, again, that's changing the status quo. People feel like streets are for cars. You're from the government and you're trying to change things, and that's not turned out so well in the past. And so a big piece of what we did, first of all, was setting out a vision of what we were going to do. Mike Bloomberg's Plan YC agenda was an important one, and our strategic plan was an important one because we went out and said, this is what we're trying to do. This is our big vision. We want to accommodate more people and make it easier to get around without having to have a car and reduce our carbon emissions by 30%. How do we do this? And so transportation was a critical part of that mix. But even if communities didn't understand or didn't like a bike lane or a bus lane or a pedestrian plaza, they knew why we were doing it. So having that vision is important, and it supports the project work that follows. The other piece is again, showing people what's possible. We moved quickly with temporary materials, right? So we didn't wait years and years. We just showed what was possible. And when people saw it, you know, they liked it. It wasn't like this scary thing, but doing it temporarily also kind of reduces the anxiety that people feel about it, right? They can test it. If it's terrible, we'll put it back. And I think the third piece is that there's, you know, we had data that we used to support these projects. And so we could show what happened. And that's really important when you're fighting these kinds of battles, because so much of the fight is done like an anecdote. Oh, traffic is worse. Oh, this is terrible for business. Oh, people are just, you know, it's dangerous. but we had the data to push back. And so I think the most powerful impact here is giving people the opportunity to say yes. People want change, and given a choice, they will choose better streets.
Yeah, and by the way, people, you can go to gpenalosa.ca and view videos from the past, because one of the things you're saying of change, we had the person that has been transforming the school streets in Paris, because people said, oh, Paris was built that way. No, they began 3 years ago and they have done over 300 schools. And one of the things they do is that initially all they do is bring some gates. So they put these metal gates. So people go to home on Friday, they come back on Monday, and the gates are there. And they say, okay, let's see it for 6 months, or let's do it for a year. If they don't work, okay, we get rid of the gates. But if it does work, then we invest the money with the trees and everything. How was the process in Times Square? You spoke about the chairs, the plastic chairs, and people. How was your experience of going from pilots to permanent?
You know, it was interesting because when we said we were going to do this, everybody said, it's going to be Carmageddon. I mean, all the newspapers, all the media were 100% against this. You know, there were interviews, you always have the TV reporters that interview the taxi cab drivers, and they're like, this is a nightmare. She doesn't know what she's doing. It's a terrible thing. But Mike was all about trying new things, and Times Square was broken. It was dirty, dangerous, bad for business, underperforming. It was a problem that was hidden in plain sight. And by looking at restoring, right, the grid and looking at bringing back the life on the street, that was a critical component. And so the magic with Times Square was just piloting it and just showing what was possible. Again, we could put it back if it didn't work out, and we were measuring it from all different angles. And so the skeptics really came around very fast because they saw that it wasn't bad for traffic, it was better for business, it was fun. People could actually take in, the signs and the people and the magic of Times Square rather than fearing that they were going to get run over. And so, not a surprise that from every single metric, it was a wild success. And so, but again, it was having that temporary touch and showing what was possible that changed things. Now, people that have grown up, 10 years old, 15 years old, they grew up seeing Times Square as it's always been there. That's what they expect it to be. The expectation, their status quo's changed. And I think it just shows that you really can change the status quo. You really can change the cultural expectations. You have to be strong about it. You have to measure it, and you have to stand up. But that change is absolutely possible.
And Clara's asking, when you look back on the time transforming New York City streets, is there anything you would have done differently in terms of strategy or communications or timing or engagement?
If with more time, we would have gotten more projects done, right? Like there were projects that we would have liked to have seen more elements of. 34th Street, for example, the bus rapid transit there. We could have had a stronger bus rapid transit connect there, which the city is working on now. We did push for congestion pricing, and in 2007, now we have it going in 2025, so it took a while to get there. So just think of what could have happened if congestion pricing had been implemented, in 2007 and not in 2025. All that money that could have been used to renovate our transit system and actually provided more possibilities for the excess street space. 20% of space is now available for other uses thanks to the reduction in traffic due to congestion pricing. So, it's worked in every single city that's tried it. After about a 4-month period, people love it. And so, but I think that the most important thing wasn't just the projects. It was setting the policy and the practices. So it's what New York City DOT does now and not just what we did. It kind of transformed the way the city does business. And now in subsequent administrations, they're continuing to build the bike lanes, they're continuing to build the plazas, they're continuing to build the bus rapid transit. So I think it's actually changed the DNA of how New York City DOT works. And I think that's really important.
Okay, and Liz Addison says, I live in Toronto where the streets are narrow. She lives downtown where the streets are narrow and there's insufficient space for pedestrians, transit, green space, bicycles, cafes, cars. We seem to live to have to choose or share space. It doesn't seem to work. What do you suggest for this situation? Well, which
Well,
is the case everywhere. You're not going to move the building, so you have the same space. Uh, what do you do when you need to choose?
Well, it's not just about one street. It's really about a vision for a city, a vision for a district, for the people that live and work there. I mean, you could say the same thing about a lot of European cities, right? Like very, very narrow, like you look at Copenhagen, you look at London, you look at a lot of different cities that are there, and they've been able to set up a network. Not every street needs to be used the same way. And so if you have a network of bike lanes and a network of walking, you can set up a very different system. You just need a bigger vision of where you want your city to be and who your city is for and who it's serving.
And Tim Gill, who's an expert on cities and children, is saying that on the book Killed by a Traffic Engineer, Wes Marshall, he argues that the most compelling way to build a new vision for streets and traffic is to focus on children's safety, mobility, their health, and well-being. What do you think of this?
I think it's spot on. I chair an organization called the Global Designing Cities Initiative, and we've written a book called Streets for Kids, and it's design guidance to design streets for kids at the kid level, looking at the street from the eyes of a child. Because when you design a street that works for kids, you design a street that works for everyone. And I encourage everybody to go to GDCI and look up Streets for Kids, gdciglobal.org. There's great work there. And, I think that people are embracing this. And it's a great way to talk about street design, to talk about kids, right? And that, I think, has become a very compelling lens that people are using when they are transforming their streets.
And what do you think? There are many cities in Canada and the UK, less in the US, where post-pandemic people are staying working from home or hybrid, or maybe working from home at least 3 of the 5 days. How do you make the streets relevant? How do you transform the streets? How can you create thriving downtowns?
That's also a really important issue that so many cities are struggling with. I mean, through the NACDO design guidance, National Association of City Transportation Officials, we put out a guidance for Streets for Pandemic Response and Recovery, which goes through strategies to redesign your streets in this post-pandemic world. Because it's very important. Streets are the foundation of a city. And that is what makes a city great or not great. And so we need to be prioritizing, giving people a reason to come to the central city, right? If they're working remotely, that means we're going to need to be programming them, offering different things. We're going to have to change the mix of housing and office space. And so cities are coming up with what that looks like. And I think the most successful cities, New York is starting to do that. You're seeing a lot of cities that are actually taking a post-pandemic lens, understanding that 5 days a week in the office is not coming back. And so it's an opportunity to actually look differently at how we use the most valuable resource that a city has, which is our streets.
And it's so important because at the end of the day, today, anybody that is good at anything, making pizza, being a nurse, being an engineer, a scientist, can live anywhere in the world. So there's nothing more important for a city leader than how to retain their people, how to attract good people. And the streets is the best place to do it. Janelle, Kathy Kurtz is saying, if you have an experience lifting up parts of the city where the most disadvantaged populations, the low-income areas, people where there's a lot of unhoused people, substance abuse, what do you do with those streets?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question.
She is thinking if you have experience lifting up areas, disadvantaged populations, like homeless people, substance abuse.
It's a great question. When we were setting up our pedestrian plaza program, giving communities an opportunity to stop, to sit, to enjoy, to play. Mike Bloomberg had set out a policy which said we're not creating public space unless there's a maintenance agreement that goes along with it. Because there had been too many experiences where public space was then neglected, turned into sort of areas filled with garbage. And so he wanted to make sure that these public spaces were well taken care of. That's easier in a place where you've got business improvement districts, which tend to be the more commercial areas of a city. But our public space strategy can't be about, we're only having public space in wealthier neighborhoods that have business districts. We need to have public space in all neighborhoods. And so we created a neighborhood plaza partnership program where we basically helped communities and paid for them to set up these maintenance programs. So we had formerly homeless people that were helping to clean the plazas. We had people that had been formerly incarcerated come and help do the greening and the watering of these different plazas. And so we went from place to place, community to community, to help these communities create these spaces and places that worked for them and were designed for them. And I think that kind of a lens is extraordinarily important. Some of the work that I showed today was focused on, some Manhattan areas. This work happened all over the city in all 5 boroughs. It's important that people have the dignity to be able to get around easily without having to drive, that have the ability to cross the street safely without being scared that they're going to be hit by a car or that, God forbid, somebody's going to be killed. And so prioritizing those streets and places was a critical part of our work and continues to be a very important lens for progressive cities going forward.
Janette, you were the commissioner of transportation, and before you, everybody thought DOT was about cars, cars, cars. But nevertheless, you led the creation of summer streets. All of the people said, what, are you crazy? The DOT is leading a program that in the summer you're going to have streets without cars and for people. Why do you think it was important for the DOT to lead a program such as a very, very successful program such as summer streets?
Well, first of all, I was inspired by no small part by you, Gil, and the work that you did in Bogota, because that was transformative and in fact led the revolution of a different approach to how we can use our streets. They don't have to be used the same way all the time. And summer streets really clicked for people. That was a really aha moment for so many people. The idea that our streets could be used differently, that Park Avenue could become a play street, a play space, that it didn't just have to be about cars. And there were so many people who were hungry for this kind of an approach. And so now we're, 15 years later, it's continued and expanded. And you see cities around the world that are following basically your lead. And it's bigger than ever. So I encourage you, if you're coming to New York City, to come and check out a summer street this August or every August going forward.
And Nihedika, who is from Kathmandu, Nepal, is saying that driving a car is a high social status and walking and cycling is looked down. How do you change that perception? You have worked in many, many emerging countries, in many other cities, how do you deal with that change? What is it that has clicked? Is it about health, or is it about fun or happiness? How do you change? What have you found that clicks in changing mentalities?
I think it was your brother who said that an advanced society isn't one where the poor can afford a car, but where the rich take public transit. And I think that's what it's about. And so, you have hundreds of thousands of more people that are taking the bus because it's a faster way to get around. It's an easier way to get around. Once you set it up that way, you're encouraging people to do that. You've got many more people, thousands more people, millions more people now riding bikes because they feel safe and protected in these bike lanes. You're not going to wish people onto buses and bikes, but you can build the infrastructure and give them the priority that they need on the street to make a big difference. And that's how you change that culture.
And why do you think this has been so politicized? Some people say, oh, having great streets is left or is right or is center. It's where, I mean, having safe streets and fun and exciting and thriving, why is it that some people have allowed this to be part of one political party or another, not only in the US, but around the world? It's how to get elected officials to realize that this has nothing to do with left or right, but it's about a city for people.
You know, there's this myth that, you know, what's bad for cars is bad for a city and it's bad for economics. I mean, that's a myth that's, you know, 100 years old. But, you know, reinforcing car culture is killing cities. It's stifling their growth. And cities are innovative spaces and places. And, you know, it's what we've talked about before. You know, people and companies can move anywhere these days. And so it's actually an economic development strategy to build city streets that are easier to bike and walk around, because that's what people want. People want to have it be easy to get around without having to have a car. And that's true. If you take a look, particularly kids, people under 40, that's the priority. You know, so many fewer people are getting driver's licenses these days that live in cities because there are different options. And when you create healthy options, alternatives for getting around, people use it. And that creates a better city, and that creates a better business environment. So it's a virtuous circle.
Do you think that is because of health or money, or what is more efficient? Because yeah, cars are very, very, very expensive. The people that have cars in the US or Canada are spending 20% of their income on the car. So it's very expensive. Their houses, the area for the car is 20-30%. Or do you think it's because of health, telling people, you know, mental and physical health is going to be better? Or is it because of climate change and the environment? What would you recommend people to use as benefit? What clicks into decision makers or into the citizens to say, oh, you know, it's okay. I don't want to spend all my money on a car. I mean, I'd rather go on vacation, or I'd rather have dinner with my family or something else.
No, it's true. I mean, in a lot of places, owning a car is more expensive than having a child. But again, all of this is about having some options, right? You have options to get around. And I think that's key. The message changes from place to place. There's no, like I said, there's no magic message that, you know, you wave a magic wand and voila, everybody suddenly gets it. That's why I think so much of the time, data is really important to show that these projects and programs and strategies work, right? Like, it's better for business. You know, you get more people around more affordably. And so, you know, when you leave the house, I think the mark of a world-class city is that you've got those options. It's not also anti-car. You need cars for certain, you know, people and situations and landscapes. It's not an anti-car strategy. It's a pro-choice strategy. And so that's what the magic is about, is giving people options. And that's what makes a city a strong and vibrant place.
Yeah, and I've seen Janette all around the world, and it's not a cookie cutter. She's not bringing what she did in New York to Milan or to Bogota or to wherever. No, each city is different. Even within the cities, each neighborhood is different. And Janette, we like to end with a call to action. You have people here from all over the world. Some are from public health, some are elected officials, other urban planners. What would you recommend to people? What would be your call to action at this critical time on how to move forward, transforming streets, realizing that it's not easy, it never is? What is your departing call to action to everybody? And once again, thank you very, very much. You are amazing. You are such a leader. You know, when Janette became commissioner of transportation in New York, practically there were no women transportation commissioners anywhere. And now, post Janette, you start seeing women commissioners everywhere. And it's so nice because also not only were not commissioners, but like the top 20 positions within the Department of Transportation always male-oriented, which obviously is not healthy. It's like when you go to public health and almost all are women. No, we also need men, but you open the door in the Department of Transportation everywhere. So please tell us a little bit your call to action, and thanks for having shared so many wonderful knowledge with everyone.
Well, keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting, keep fighting. You know, tell your leaders that you want to see changes. Tell your local media that not every street story has to be a controversy. It's not utopian to want a street where walking and biking and taking the bus are real options. That's the mark of a smart and well-designed cities. So keep fighting. It's worth it. It might not happen today or tomorrow, but it will happen. And you just need to keep pushing.
Janette, thank you. Thank you very much. What an amazing presentation. So many examples from small cities and large cities, and even everything that you mentioned about New York. You showed how it is doable anywhere, not as a copy and paste, but about adapting and improving. You made it very clear that every city is different, every neighborhood is different, every street is different. I hope that everyone who watches this video will share it with elected officials, with city staff, with advocates, decision makers at all levels, so that people will get inspired to also transform your city into a more livable place for everyone.